भवतु सह नौ भुनक्तु सह वीर्यं कर्वावहै तेजस्विनावदितमस्तु मा विद्विषावहै। ओम शांति शांति शांति। Om, may He protect us both together, teacher and student. May He nourish us both together. May we work conjointly with the great energy. May our studies be vigorous and effective. May we may not mutually dispute, or may we not hate anyone. Om, let there be peace in me. Let there be peace in my environment, and let there be peace in the forces that act on me. Dear students, we are going to discuss tuberculosis of spine on the following points, and the points includes incidence and etiology, why predilection for spine, 3. regional distribution and sites of involvement within the vertebra, 4. embryological explanation for involvement of two adjacent vertebrae, 5. the sequence of pathological events, 6. types of vertebral reaction, 7. cold abscess formation, 8. clinical features, coin test, physical findings, 9. typical attitude of tuberculous spine based on the area of involvement, 10. spread of the cold abscess, 11. investigations, 12. MCR guidelines for the treatment, 13. indications, objectives and various methods of surgery, and lastly, in brief, about the Kumar and Tully's mid-path raising. So tuberculosis of the spine, also known as pot spine after Sir Percival Pot. Now this is the most common form of skeletal tuberculosis, constituting almost 50% of all the skeletal tuberculosis. Now if you look for the regional distribution, we find that the involvement at various levels will be as follows. Cervical spine 12%, cervicodorsal 5%, dorsal 42%, dorsolumbar 12%, lumbar 26%, and lumbosacral 3%. Now, as is evident from the above data, the spinal tuberculosis commonly affects the lower thoracic and the lumbar vertebra, accounting for nearly 80% of the cases. Now, 3 reasons are cited for this area of predilection, and these include: 1. large amount of spongy tissues within the vertebral body, 2. degree of weight bearing which is comparatively more, 3. more vertebral mobility is seen in this particular area. Now, let us see the sites of involvement within the vertebra. Now, it is observed that the spinal tuberculosis could start in any of the part of the vertebra. However, 95% of the time it is the anterior part of the vertebra which is involved, and 5% of the time only it is the posterior element. Now, the anterior involvement includes the central portion, as you can see by the blue dot. The metaphyseal or the intervertebral space, you can see the horizontal yellow line in the diagram, and the anterior or the periosteal involvement as shown by the red vertical line. Appendiceal occasionally shown by the green dot, the transverse processes, and rarely the vertebral arch are affected. However, the true tubercular arthritis is seen in the atlantoaxial and at the atlanto-occipital joints. Now let us see more details about the metaphyseal or intervertebral space involvement. Now this is indicated in this particular diagram by A. TB infection occurs at the metaphyseal or the intervertebral space in 98% of the time. Now this is the most common area of involvement, and it is not without cause, without reason. Now let us see what is that reason. So embryological development explains the reason for this. Lower half of the one vertebra and the upper half of the adjacent vertebra with the intervening disc all develop from one sclerotum, and which has got a common source of blood supply. That is what is shown in this particular diagram. Now this is the reason why 98% of the spinal tuberculosis occurs at the metaphyseal area of the adjacent vertebra along with the intervertebral disc involved. Now the central type of involvement, that is shown by C, which is very less common. Now this is known to produce the central or concertina collapse of the vertebra. You can see the second diagram, how the vertebral body has become like a coin, and then the anterior or periosteal involvement, it is shown by B in the particular diagram, and in the anterior or the periosteal lesion, anterior surface of the vertebral body is involved, it may give rise to anterior wedge compression of the vertebra. That is what is shown diagrammatically in the second portion. Now let us find out the sequence of pathological events in the spinal tuberculosis. As mentioned earlier, due to primary foci in the lung, lymph node or abdomen, the basilemia develops and the organism reaches the spine through the Batson plexus. Now the particular diagram shows about the Batson plexus. Tuberculous endarteritis, which develops following the infection, results in the marrow devitalization. Later on, the tubercle follicle develops. Now, the lamellae are destroyed due to hyperemia, causing osteoporosis. Because of this, the vertebral body is easily compressed. Now, in the thoracic vertebra, because of the normal kyphotic curve there, anterior wedge compression is more common. In lordotic cervical and lumbar vertebra, however, the wedging is minimal. Now, there are two types of the vertebral reactions commonly encountered in the skeletal tuberculosis, and they are exudative, and caseative, as shown in the above table. Now the exudative reaction is the common. It results into severe hyperergic reaction causing severe osteoporosis. It leads to rapid spread and the abscess is found frequently and constitutional symptoms are pronounced. However, when it comes to caseative reaction, it is rarer. Though the mechanism of formation and the spread of destruction is similar to the exudative type, but the speed is slower. Now coming to the cold abscesses. Now this non-pathogenic infection results in the formation of cold abscesses, which penetrates the epiphyseal cortex and involves the adjacent disc and the vertebrae. It may also spread beneath the anterior longitudinal ligament and may reach to the neighboring vertebra. When it spreads posteriorly, it may cause pressure on the spinal cord, which is the more commonly seen in the thoracic area because the spinal canal is smaller in this particular area. Now the posterior longitudinal ligament limits the spread of the sequestry and the bone fragments into the joints. Sometimes the cold abscess may penetrate the anterior longitudinal ligament and migrate along the lines of least resistance, that is, along the facial plane, blood vessels and the nerves. Now, cold abscess consists of 5 things. 1. Serum. 2. WBCs. 3. Caseous material. 4 granulation tissue, and 5 the tubercle bacilli. Now coming to the clinical features of the port spine. The tuberculosis of the spine is usually insidious in onset, although sometimes it may present acutely. The constitutional symptoms usually antedate local spinal involvement. Now the weakness, anorexia, night sweats and cries, evening or afternoon rise of temperature, loss of appetite and weight are some of those constitutional symptoms. The patient may complain of the back pain, which is localized over the site of the vertebral involvement, or is referred depending upon the specific nerve root involvement or nerve root irritation. Now thus if the cervical roots are involved, pain radiates to the arm. If the dorsal roots are involved, the patient complains of girdle pain. And if the lumbar roots are involved, patient complains of pain radiating to groin. And if the sacral roots are involved, the patient complains of sciatica. Back stiffness is another complaint, common complaint, earliest complaint given by the patient. The patient is unable to bend and pick up the objects on the ground. And based on this particular fact, a classical coin test is described for children with tuberculosis of the spine. If patient complains of stiffness, weakness, awkwardness of the lower extremities, it heralds the onset of paraplegia. Now, if the patient has this tuberculosis of the spine, then he will have a very protective attitude and has a very cautious and a careful gait. The muscle spasm will straighten out the spine. The spinous processes of the involved vertebra is tender to percuss. And when an attempt is made to rotate the vertebra, it causes pain. Back movements are decreased in all directions, especially forward flexion. Now there is a pronounced wasting of back muscles. The clinical attitude of the patient varies according to the reason involved. Now the cold abscess may be seen as a paravertebral swelling in various areas, which we will be seeing in our next slides. The patient may develop or present with a neurological complication like spastic or a flaccid paraplegia. Of the various deformities of the spine due to tuberculosis, kyphotic deformity is the most common and is seen over 95% of the cases. Now the general examination reveals signs of anemia, debility, involvement of lung, lymph nodes. The typical attitude of the spinal tuberculosis depends, as I told last, on the vertebra involved as shown in this particular table. Now if they are the upper cervical vertebra involved, then patient may present you with an attitude of a wry neck. Lower cervical vertebra, it will give the military position. The lower thoracic vertebra will give the Alderman's gait. Upper lumbar causes prominent abdomen. Lower lumbar involvement causes increased lordosis. Now let us see the spread of cold abscesses from the cervical region. The cold abscess from the cervical region may spread behind the prevertebral fascia, and it may come to the posterior edge of the sternocleidomastoid as what is shown in this particular diagram. Then from retropharyngeal space it may go to mediastinum, and from here it may gravitate towards trachea, esophagus, pleural cavity, and from pleural cavity through the lateral aortic ligament and quadratus lumborum it may remain behind the kidneys, or it may extend along the nerves related to the bed of the kidney, along the 12th ilioinguinal or iliohypogastric nerves, and it may present then at the anterabdominal wall as what you can see in this particular diagram. From the thoracic region, the cold abscess may press the spinal cord posteriorly, causing paraplegia. It may spread laterally towards the extrapleural space, causing effusion. It may penetrate the anterior longitudinal ligament and may lie in the mediastinum. Now it may remain prevertebral, that is in the posterior mediastinum, or from here it may spread through the medial aortic ligament, enter the psoas sheath. Now you can see in this particular diagram on the left side the psoas sheath, the abscess is seen, and this psoas abscess reaches the lesser trochanter where the psoas is inserted. Spread of the cold abscess in the lumbar region. It may spread along the psoas sheath, along the femoral vessels to the femoral triangle, or along the gluteal vessels to the gluteal region. Now rarely it spreads to the iliac crest. Now you can see in the first diagram it may present in the Petit's triangle, and sometimes through the median aortic ligament it forms a lumbar abscess as shown in the second diagram. But then why call it as a cold abscess? So cold abscess is called cold because it is not associated with the features like redness and heat etc. as seen in the pyogenic abscess. Now coming to the spinal irregularities in the skeletal tuberculosis. The irregularities in the TB spine includes kyphosis. 95% of the time what is the irregularity? That is kyphosis. In 5% of the cases there could be scoliosis. Then lordosis, boarding and paravertebral thickening may also be seen. The other features of port spine includes the muscle spasm, wasting of all spinal muscles, spastic or flaccid paraplegia 20% of the time, cold abscesses in 20% of the cases, sinuses 13% of the cases, and various complications of skeletal tuberculosis. Now the various investigations which are advised, which includes various laboratory tests. Here the hemoglobin percent suggests anemia. The TLC-DLC suggests lymphocytosis. Serum proteins, they indicate the hypoproteinemia. ESR is mildly raised up to 40 mm Hg at the end of 40 mm at the end of 1 hour. Mantoux, now it is helpful in children less than 2 to 3 years but not diagnostic. All these general tests, they are suggestive of the chronic disease. Then radiographs, it is a very important diagnostic test. On an average, 3 vertebrae are affected. The earliest changes include the disc space narrowing, then loss of disc space and rarefied osteopenic bodies. Now whenever you find the osteoporosis, it means that almost 40% of the calcium has been lost from the body. The late changes in the X-rays for the port spine includes the anterior waist compression in the anterior vertebral involvement as shown in the first X-ray, the central vertebral collapse, also called concertina collapse in the central involvement as seen in the MRI picture in the second MRI picture. Now the soft tissue swelling and its calcification are highly predictable of tuberculosis. In the healing stages, the vertebral body and the posterior element may appear to be denser due to sclerosis. Now you can also find various paravertebral shadows. If seen on the X-rays, it indicates the cold abscess. Now look at this particular X-ray of the cervical spine. In the cervical spine region as shown in above picture, a shadow is seen in between the vertebral bodies and the pharynx. Now you call it as a retropharyngeal, and it denotes the retropharyngeal cold abscess. Below fourth thoracic vertebra, fusiform or a bird nest shadow appears. In case of the psoas abscess, as you see in this particular X-ray, Unilateral or bilateral widening of the psoas shadow is seen in the lumbar region. And aneurysmal phenomena. Tense thoracic vertebral abscess showing a scalloping effect, as you can see with the red arrow variety. The paradiscal lesion, we must note that the most common is the paradiscal lesion, and rarest is the appendiceal involvement in the spinal tuberculosis. CT scan identifies the paravertebral tissue shadow and swelling more readily than the X-rays. It helps to assess the degree of neural compromise as well, and it helps in a better evaluation of the pathologic process. Now, some people prefer CT to X-ray to determine the clinical progress. CT findings are very much similar to the X-ray findings. The only detectable abnormality on the plain X-ray and CT scan specifically related to tuberculosis is the fine calcification in the paravertebral soft tissue shadow. Now, MRI scan, it has now become a gold standard in the diagnosis of tuberculosis of the spine. It helps in further delineation of the disease and helps to detect the cord compression. It does not eliminate the need of the biopsy, however, it is 94% accurate. Now, in this particular CT scan, you can see the involvement of L3 and L2 vertebra with the protrusion and the cord compression seen at that particular level. The small calcifications seen on the X-rays are not seen on MRI. Now, this is a picture where you can see the arrows pointing towards the port spine. Bone scans, the gallium scanning is useful in disseminated tuberculosis. However, no one diagnostic test is 100% accurate for a definitive diagnosis, and hence diagnosis is dependent on the culture of the organism and requires biopsy by percutaneous technique under the CT control. Ultrasound, it is useful to detect the size of cold abscess in the lumbar vertebral disease. CT scan and MRI are also helpful in detecting the tubercular affections of the posterior spinal element, craniovertebral and craniodorsal region, and sacrum and sacroiliac region. Now, role of CBNAT. We have already discussed the role of CBNAT in diagnosis and management of tuberculosis or the skeletal tuberculosis in my previous lecture. Coming to the treatment of tuberculosis of the spine. Now, definitive diagnosis by the biopsy and culture is necessary before starting the treatment because of the toxicity of the chemotherapeutic regime and the length of the treatment required. Now, Medical Research Council Working Party has evaluated the non-operative and operative methods of treatment of tuberculosis of the spine. They concluded as follows. 1. Radical surgery performed under chemotherapeutic coverage gives better results with regards to the deformity correction, development of paraplesis and its resolution. 2. Chemotherapy with long-term bed rest with or without cast is ineffective. They mean that bed rest is not at all required for the treatment of tuberculosis of the spine. And third recommendation, what they say is, when the facilities for the radical surgeries are not available, ambulatory chemotherapy means without bed rest. Ambulatory chemotherapy is the treatment of choice. Chemotherapy controls 90% of the tuberculosis of the spine, as already mentioned and has been discussed in detail in my previous lectures. Coming to the indication for surgery. The indication for surgery includes 1. Neurological symptoms, 2. Kyphosis with several vertebral involvement, 3. Severe kyphosis, 4. Progressive kyphosis, and 5. Resistance to the chemotherapy. The other indications for the surgery includes recurrence of disease, cord compression, progressive impairment of pulmonary function, and spinal instability. So these are the 4 other indications for the surgery in port spine. Now, what are the objectives of surgery? The surgery helps to excise the infected tissue. It decompresses the intraspinal neural elements. It reduces the spinal instability and provides stability by spine fusion techniques. Now, what are the various surgical procedures? So, various surgical procedures used in the treatment of TB spine includes aspiration, minimal debridement, radical debridement, and spinal fusion. 4 important techniques. Now, aspiration, this is useful to aspirate the content of cold abscess through a thick bored needle. Now, needle should be inserted below the abscess to enable the gravity to help drain the abscess or to help drain the contents. Coming to minimal debridement consists of evacuating the cold abscess through the costotransversectomy or anterolateral decompression. The costotransversectomy is shown in the first diagram, whereas the anterolateral decompression is shown in the second picture. Now here the contents are evacuated, the walls are thoroughly curated, and bone grafting is done if necessary. Now recently, evacuation and debridement of a thoracic cold abscess through a thoracoscope has been successfully tried. Coming to the radical debridement, this is done through the anterior approach and is invariably followed by the spinal fusion with either a stud graft involving a rib or a fibula after a thorough debridement. This procedure has to be done, however, before the abscess or neurological complication develops. Coming to the spinal fusion, the fusion could be either anterior or posterior. But in the former, that is the anterior fusion, the normal anterior compressive forces are brought into play, resulting into a high rate of successful bony union. Progression of the disease and pseudoarthrosis are commonly seen if you go for a posterior fusion. Now, the only indication for the posterior fusion is to add support for the disease at cervicothoracic or a dorsolumbar region. Various complications of the port spine includes paraplegia, cold abscess, sinuses, secondary infection, amyloid disease, and finally fatality. Now, the last point, the middle path regime. Tully and Kumar advocated a triple drug therapy without surgery. In their series, operative treatment was reserved for patients who are not responding favorably to the drug therapy after 6 months of the treatment, and whenever there was a recrudescence of the disease or patient with the neurological complications. Now the operative treatment is combined with 6 to 12 months of bed rest, followed by 18 to 24 months of spinal bracing. Did you know Tully's middle path regime is the most widely accepted protocol for the management of tuberculosis, spinal tuberculosis. Now here, before we end, I want to talk you about one more important topic. Dear students, one of the commonest problem we are facing in our routine clinical orthopedic practice is of obesity. Eat less and exercise more formula has proved to be the failed formula. Of late, I have been working on the latest, most scientific, evidence-based concept of weight loss, Happy Key. You may find few videos on this topic as well on my YouTube channel. The obesity among the medical students is at its peak nowadays. Due to obesity, not only they are bullied in the college, but most of them also lose their self-confidence, resulting in deteriorating in the performance if in their academics. For all of them, this online video course will be the most valuable. If you are interested, you may visit my Facebook page https://www.facebook.com/thehappytea, and my website address is www.drsudhir.com. I host regular webinar on the same twice a week, Wednesday and Friday at 8 p.m. and on Sundays at 12 noon. You may join using the link https://zoom.us/j/8279404308. Thank you for subscribing my channel.